Hello, my friend.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for being in this space. Thank you for being in Undressing the Soul.
Thank you.
Welcome, Kelly Robinson. Today is May 26th, and
Yes.
this amazing soul is joining us from New Jersey. You've been my client for almost a year already, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to welcome you. Thank you. Kelly is a healer and currently has been going through an incredible inward journey. So the mic is yours. Tell us, because we were going into an incredible conversation, and I say, wait a minute, this is worthy of being recorded. So let's begin. Let's
Yeah.
begin. The first question. Well, by the way, who are you?
So currently I am uh, a soul who's expanding. I'm experiencing expansion. I um I don't think it's unique for anybody. I think it's um part of the process. But that's where I can definitely identify with right now is the expansion part.
Hmm. Why why did you choose? Why did you believe you needed to go into an inward journey? And did you know what were you getting yourself into? Because just a few weeks, you were like,
So
okay, what is this?
so for me what happened was I was watching everything that I had created collapse. And when the journey, I don't want to say it was the first part of the journey. And what comes to me is that song by America, um, um, A Horse with No Name. And it's like on the first part of the journey. And, but for me, what happened was if you would ask me in like 2020, any of these questions, I had answers. I felt like I was on a path. I knew what the path was. Um, I felt like I had answers. I felt like I was in a position to actually help others. Um, I was doing uh, school for hypnotherapy. I was doing work with clients. I was helping them process subconscious programs and um, helping them get out of those things. And so I was in a really good place and I felt very comfortable. I was doing that work, um, but there were levels. And when I started to go into the deeper levels, because the first part was fabulous, it's like, oh, yeah, oh, there's healing available. It's easy, it's fun. It's like, it was a funness to it. It was like, there was like a lot of definitely like, I was excited about it. And then as the healing started going deeper, it was like, hold on a second, time out. This is no longer fun. And it was hitting a lot of very deep places for me, which it would have to, right? Um, but things literally started collapsing. So at that point, I realized that I needed assistance and I needed someone. And it wasn't even really about needing per se, it was understanding that it was necessary for this particular part of the journey. Assistance was necessary. And that's really how the process, that part started in moving into the inward journey. Because some of it, again, I had been doing it for a long time. I had been doing it alone. I had dealt with many different healers and stuff like that in the past, of course, throughout your journeys. Absolutely. Um, but when things started like physically collapsing and all those things started happening, it was definitely time for a, a different level of support.
And that's when we came and started working together. You said something
Yes.
very, very important for people to understand. It was no longer fun. People have this notion that the awakening and the night of the soul and the dirty soul work and however you want to call it, it's fun and they're butterflies and they're unicorns and all that great stuff. And in reality, when you really go deep and you face yourself, your fears, your shame, your guilt, there is a lot of uncomfortable everything. And you've had now to have to go through that, you need a lot of courage and willingness. And I've seen you both because you're here in New Jersey. So we've had I have the blessing to actually see you physically here in my studio. And I've seen you process these emotions deeply. When I say it has it's none of the fun part. What is really about an inward journey for you?
So I I think two parts to this. One is that for people who are starting the journey, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not fun. I knew people who were processing the emotions. For me, was one of the first stages, and understanding that I could give myself permission to process the emotions, which was huge. Never in my life have I ever thought that these emotions, learning they were emotions, energy in motion, they needed to be moved. I remember the first time that I processed the emotion, I thought I was going to literally die, because I was like, this is so ugly. This is so like, what's going to happen? And my body tensed up and all those things. But after I did it, I was like, oh, this is
Mm,
exciting. So that's how I really felt about processing the first part of the stuff. And for other people, it was like, no, this is terrible. I don't like this at all. They never got past. So each part kind of is an opportunity for you to uh, face this very big fear or stop. And that's really what the healing is about, because there's many opportunities in it for people to stop.
mm-hmm.
They
Yes.
don't have to continue. And when I say the fun part for me was, I had learned to process the emotions. I learned, I was like, oh, you could do it too. How exciting. Let's do it together. And I was like, no, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to, it's just, whatever. But then the other layer underneath, which was a lot scarier, it was like jumping into a pool. So the day is very hot. You jump into, let's say, not even a pool, a lake, and you're dancing around in the lake. You're, oh, this is great. Look at the water. It's you're jumping around, whatever. And then all of a sudden, now you're in the deep, and
Yeah.
you're like, wait a second, this is not the same lake. This is not what I signed up for when I said I was going swimming. The pool floaty is gone.
Mm,
Um, the whatever that I was, the floaties on my arms are gone. The whatever, all this stuff is gone now. Um, I'm here, and I feel like I'm drowning. I, I don't even know if I'm technically trained enough to be in this part of the pool. And I think that's really what I mean by that inward journey, is that it doesn't matter. It's not like I'm saying it can't happen on stage one, stage three. It doesn't, it's unique for you. But maybe putting your toe in the pool is the first, the part where you're like, oh no, I'm
yes.
not even gonna, whatever. So I'm not saying that it's not, everybody doesn't have their own part where they're like, this is the inward journey. For me personally, like I said, it was when mine was more of like, the water is now over my head, and I mean like a couple feet over my head, not just like the top of my head is out. Like, I mean, like, and I don't know if I'm literally able to uh to do this stroke. I don't know if I'm able to,
Yeah.
submerge stuff. I don't know. And there was, and just like in all the pieces to it, there is there is the opportunity for you to go back to shore. There is the opportunity for you to swim back. That was the other piece to it. It was like, I was aware, like, I can either swim back
Yeah.
or I can keep going. I know the way back, but back is, I also know what's on the other side. I know that life too.
Mm-hmm.
Back wasn't really an option. So that's the thing, is you get to decide in all of it.
And that's the beauty, because you have a choice at every single point,
Every stage, every stage,
and you
every
get to
step.
decide how fast you go, how
Yes.
willing you become, how
Yeah.
open you decide to be to enter this windows of opportunity that will show you in glimpses who you really are, your essence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's different, and it's so different for everyone's. It's unique. It's like it's the thing that's crafted just for you, and there's choice in there, and it's, so it's a very intricate process to
But
it,
one
to
thing
the
that I've noticed with you is that you are always willing.
I don't want to say
Always.
always.
No, 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 no matter how hard and even physically painful it was, because you were here right after your surgery,
Yeah, it was.
physically asking me, okay, I want to joke. Okay, let's do a joke.
Yeah.
You've always shown this willingness. And even if you were uncomfortable or you didn't understand the whole thing or what was going on in your world, inside of you, you were always willing to explore.
I think the gift that I have is this an enormous amount of self-awareness. I don't
Yes.
think everybody has to have it. I don't think it's required, and I also think it's a blessing and a curse. And the reason that I was willing, because I knew the other side of it,
Yeah.
and I want to be very clear on it. It wasn't like, it was just like, I know the other side of this coin. I've lived the other side of this coin. I'm at this place where I can no longer live this other side of this coin, and I also understand what this means if I don't go forward. So some places, some different scripts will like refer to this stuff as the illusion of choice.
Mm.
Like, you do have it, but also there is, there's a piece of it that's like, the real question is, what is the choice, right? what
And
what
so
is the what
what
is
was
the
the choice for you?
so the choice for me was the way that my the way that it's funny, and and we work through this, a lot of this, the way that my default programming was set to was annihilation.
Mm.
My default programming was so level 1 that it was set to self annihilation. So for me, and people will get uncomfortable with that, but when you really dig deep, you can, just, again, me having this awareness, being like, oh, this is the same thought, this is the same thought, I've been having the same thought, and the feeling of, I don't want to do this, I don't want to, I just don't want to even be here. So my default program was a level 1, just, you know uh, very much set to a form of self annihilation. And even with saying that, it was, it's weird to say. I mean, and hopefully your audience will understand this, but even in that, there was an opportunity in that level 1, because it really wasn't set to my annihilation. It was set to the 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 persona that I had created
Mhm.
being
To
annihilated.
protect yourself.
Right, the protective personality being annihilated.
Yes.
So even though it seemed like a bad thing, it was still going to, it was like it was going to get me there either way, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
It was like, almost like, you're going to get there either way, because that protective personality will have to go. So she'll have to go this way, or she has to go this, like, whichever entry point you choose to have that protective personality be dismantled is up to you, but it still has to happen for me personally. So I hope that makes sense in what I'm saying. I know I ramble sometimes, but if you can just grasp it, yeah. Even though it was bad, it wasn't me who was going to die. It was that protective personality that still had to die, regardless of what level I chose, to go through the experience with.
Mm.
And the level one experience was a way more painful way because it includes a lot of separation. It includes a lot of the belief that you're not being supported, the belief that none
Mhm.
of this is for you. So you do think that you are the protective personality in that process. The higher, I don't want to say higher, the different levels um, include an awareness that this is happening for you. This is something you're expanding. An expansion isn't fun. Nobody signs up for and you don't know how expansion is going to come. That's the other piece to it, because then it wouldn't be expansion. Like I would have been comfortable with like maybe, I don't know, I can't even think of anything because I would a bad haircut, and I had that too. Like I would have been comfortable with that. Like, oh, that's my expansion. Oh, that's terrible. Oh, and I had that too. So it was, nobody's the expansion really has to come out of like a place where all of those different parts of that protective personality are being challenged. And who are you? Who are you? You're not her. You're not that. You're not these things that you created to keep yourself safe. And I don't want to ramble too much. I don't know how long the podcast is, but I do want to give a little back story to some of the information, which was in early last year, I started having seizures,
Mhm.
nocturnal seizures, and I had went to get them diagnosed. They said I had nocturnal epilepsy, frontal lobe epilepsy. Um, I was, I then found out that I was putting a bookshelf together, this wonderful bookshelf right here, is metal, and I hit my wrist against it, and I was showing my older son, and my younger son who has autism came, and he just bent the hand back, and
Mm.
it stopped moving. So my hand was like frozen like this. It was literally around this time, June 1st was my X-ray last year, that I found out, because I just walked around with it like, oh, I guess my hand isn't
Yeah.
going to move anymore. I finally got an X-ray, found out that I had um my wrist was broken. Speed up the storyline. I found out that both wrists had been broken. This one collapsed. There was an accident. All of these things that I had blocked out, so like literally blocked out. It was a mystery for me to even figure out, hey, how is this happening? Realizing that I'd always been in wrist pain to the point where it didn't hurt anymore. Like I just believe that everybody's wrists hurt. That's how much the
Yeah.
mind will do. It's just like, oh, well, your wrist, don't you just stop writing sometimes because your wrist locks up? No, that doesn't happen. Um, Having to get surgery done, nerve damage, all the other pieces and the components that went through that process. And it was not an easy process. Being on mind altering medication during the time because it was necessary to even get the surgery. I had to not be having seizure activity. Then finding out that the diagnosis may have been a misdiagnosis, not even knowing where that ended up with. So all of these things uh, creating this very perfect storm.
Mm.
Because before that, I was, if you ask me, I was a caretaker. I was a cook. I went to culinary school. Cooking every day or almost every day. I was many different things. And now here I am. I got both hands. Like pictures where I look like like a cartoon character because I have like just wrist weights. People are like, "Are you pumping weights or something?" I'm like, "No, they don't work." I'm like, "No, they don't work." And even I think the day before, the night before the surgery of my wrist fracturing my toe, I was like
I remember
just laid
that.
up. Yeah, I was laid up and I was like, I have one working limb right now, like one limb that's not, and the universe being like, you're gonna sit your ass down,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna sit your ass down. And this is not something that you are going to like finesse your way through. You're going to sit down and you're going to deal with this. And you're going to deal with the different levels of pain, all the different levels of, and like I said, that was the deep part of the water for me. I did not, and that was when I was like, I don't know if I'm making it through this. Exactly sure. I was like, oh, maybe I took on too much, then too much. Like, why would I have signed up for this type thing? Um, so that part of the journey, and again, just the medication, the not feeling like myself, feeling sick all the time, so many components, and then still choosing. I remember
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you this weird thing. I'd be like, at least I'm having a new experience. And it was weird for me. And that was one little grain I had because I was like, this is completely different than anything I've ever experienced before. All of my experiences have been so recycled that I could name them very quickly. I could say, I know what this is already. I know what that is. Even if I was wrong, I was still able to
Mm-hmm.
identify them and say,
Yeah.
this is that, this is that. So this was different because it was, I have no idea what this is. And I went into the great unknown. And that is the part of, and I think that's the part of anybody's journey inward.
Mm-hmm.
To bring it back to the original question, which is, where does it start? It starts when you enter the unknown. And it doesn't, the unknown may be many different places for many different people, right? But it really starts whenever you enter the unknown. And I mean, it has to be the unknown. One of the things I had to do during that period, which was huge growth, was surrender.
Ah.
Surrender to the unknown. And here's the thing about surrender. I don't know if anyone's ever talked about this, but I think we have. Um, and from going through different things also, surrender isn't a mental concept because it is the surrendering of the mind. So if you feel like you know how to surrender, if you feel like, hey, if something happened to me, I could just surrender, I would know how to do that. That is incorrect because
Mm-hmm.
it is the mind that you are literally surrendering. And the
Surrendering.
mind is the one telling you, oh, I know what to do. The mind has to be out of the equation. And you have to go into another place, which is the great unknown. You have to surrender to the flow. So it's like being in this water, right? And now you're like, okay, I can float. And it's like, but where is it going to lead you?
Yes.
Where is it going to, it's like, I can't do the backstroke. I can't do the front stroke. I can't do the whatever tools I had learned, previously. Those don't work here anymore. You can surrender, but you would have to trust that there's, and again, these are things that really deep embedded pain because, hey, trust.
Trust. That's exactly what I was gonna say after. Because you know, the part of you surrendering to the unknown, you have to have a lot of trust.
Right. And
And
you have to,
sometimes you
so
don't even know what to trust.
you
What do I
don't even know
trust?
what do I trust? What do I trust? So for me, one of the things that came up that was really big during the process, and I remember texting you about it and being so excited, and the next conversation we had, I was like really excited, was I realized that one of the biggest beliefs, programs that I was very much attached to and very much subconscious was unfavored.
Mm-hmm.
And the feeling of being unfavored literally cuts off all the trust. It's like, if you really believe, like you have like a parent, for example, and you're like, my parent, they hate me, right? And they're like, well, come with me on this journey. Take my hand. And you're like, I can't take your hand. You hate me. I don't,
Mhm.
you've never given me as much as my other siblings. You've never done as, I'm your least favorite. All of those stuff come into play. So it's a lot of reprogramming so many different aspects of yourself to even get to trust. It's not like trust is this thing that's just like, oh, all you have to do is trust.
Mm.
Sure. choice. If I didn't already believe somewhere deep in my spirit that I was being unfavored, then that, I could trust you, right? Because all of
Mhm.
this came from ultimately the belief that it wasn't trustworthy to begin with, right? So it's so funny in that way.
And we talked about taking responsibility, and you kept asking me, okay, I'm a responsible adult. Like, oh, that's not what we mean.
No. That was
That's not the
funny.
concept that we have about responsibility of being a responsible adult. We are a responsible adult. We pay our bills. We go on with our lives. But this is a deeper sense concept of responsibility. And I believe that's when things started to shift.
Yes, absolutely. That was the biggest part. And there was so much resistance on that one.
Oh,
I
yes.
think you would be so like, one time I was like, I don't want to, I was like, this, I'm done. I was like, I was like, this, I was like, I'm so mad. I was like, she keeps, like, I kept feeling like I am responsible. I am responsible. But again, the person who was talking was the 6-year-old wounded me
Mhm.
who, who was like, and also angry at responsibility, because it was like, I shouldn't have to be responsible for finding my safety. I shouldn't have to be responsible for finding my own meals. I'm 6 years old. I shouldn't have to be responsible for making myself happy. I already am too responsible. And realizing that voice that was like screaming, no more responsibility. Um, that even when the word came up, it would irritate me. I'd be
I
like,
remember, yes.
yeah, I'd be like,
And I remember
responsible.
that tag, that one of the last test that you sent me came out, and it felt like you were literally angry, and I said, good. Great. This is the breakthrough. I was so happy, and yet you were so angry.
I was so angry because that 6-year old, like I said, um, you don't know, you don't understand that when you start out on the journey. So to bring it back to the water analogy, the most wounded version of you is entering that water,
Mhm.
is entering that lake or whatever, right? And then realizing that you're not this wounded child anymore, because her voice has been so loud, she's been yelling for so long, that everything she says, you start to believe it. You're like, well, that's me. That's my voice.
Mhm.
And then realizing that 6-year-old is not you. Those ideas that you came up with, that you can't trust the world, can't trust the universe, were created from her. She believed that. Um, and for some of us, right? I'm not saying everybody, obviously, but for me, it was very clear to me that the 6-year-old who was screaming about responsibility, because I I'm often pissed off at how much responsibility I have. I'm often like, I have a child with autism. I have my own. I take care of all my own bills. I take care of. No one's ever helped. Blah, blah, whatever. And the responsibility was understanding there was a different level of responsibility, and it was the responsibility to manage my energy, to manage who I want to be, who I
Mm.
know I am. And it's different than paying bills. That's a different responsibility, you know? It's a way different responsibility. It's managing my emotion. It's managing how I'm perceiving things. It's managing what information I'm letting in. It's the manager managing the responsibility of self, right? What I'm managing these old stories now. Hey, I created this story, 10 years ago. Is it still valid? Does it still need to be here? I don't know. I don't think so. Well, let's get rid of it.
And it's not using coping mechanisms to deflect.
No.
It's
Yeah.
it's it is it's very different from it's being completely 100% self-aware, and yet self-awareness is it's so much deeper. But having that enhanced self-awareness gives you that sense of responsibility where you no longer you you're aware when you're using coping mechanisms, and then you can shift and
Yeah.
decide and choose. No, you become the observer.
And one of my biggest coping mechanisms, which again used to piss me off when you would mention it, was spiritual bypassing. And I had learned how to spiritual bypass a very long time ago. It was like, and a lot of us, when we come into this stuff, we're like, oh, it's there's it's a coping mechanism, and we don't
Mhm.
understand it because we think we're taking the higher road with stuff, but the all the stuff is still being unprocessed. The emotions are being unprocessed. We're not looking at them. we're not we're almost not having it takes away the responsibility,
Yes.
right? It
Yes.
takes away the responsibility because it's like, oh well, that's just what the universe does, or I don't, whatever the case may be. And it's not that uh it's not that spirituality or any of those ideals aren't true. It's just that you aren't in a position to go there because you just tried to jump over the big gap of other things that were in between that needed to be processed
Hmm.
for you to arrive at that and fully arrive at that. So you're trying to arrive by it almost conceptually, but your heart hasn't arrived there,
And
right? So that's
your soul definitely
yeah,
hasn't
and the
arrived.
energy hasn't arrived there. And it
No.
actually builds up more resentment in a way because you're like, I'm doing everything I should. I believe in crystals. I believe in whatever, the moon cycles. I should be, but and then because it's not the tools that are broken, it's the fact that you haven't done the things to be able to use the tools. You found out they existed. You just jumped to there and you were like, okay, how come it doesn't work for me? It should be this, it should be that. And it actually builds up more of a distrust and a resentment towards life because you're like, why does it seem like I'm the only one doing it wrong? I see all these other people, they have it, they're using these tools, it's working for them, or it appears to be working for them, or
Appears to
whatever
be.
it is,
Yes.
right? Or yeah, appears to be or whatever. But for many of us, we haven't processed that this is there and
Hmm.
here there's this big gap, and that's where all the richness is. That's where all the
Yeah.
magic actually is, in that place that we want to jump over. And the magic, what I found was the magic was in the pain. And it sounds weird to even say that, but really being able to go into it, look at it, because that's where all the transformation was. That's the point, right? The point for the transformation is in the pain. It's not when you get to the other side and you're just like, um it's almost back to the lake again. If I just you know drove around the lake and then I got out and I was like, ta-da, look, I made it through the lake.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh well, what was your journey like? And I was like, oh wait, I didn't have to go in the water. No, that wasn't that water's not important. The important thing is that I made it around the lake. Ta-da, I'm on the other side. um
And you
that
didn't see
person,
anything underneath.
you
You
didn't see anything underneath, you didn't even go in.
didn't
That
feel the
person who
waves.
you didn't think you were going to drown, you didn't spend days floating on your back, you didn't you didn't grow these new muscles, right? You
Mhm.
didn't grow this new insight on what to do when you're in the water. You didn't learn any of the things that were in it, and now you want to get the reward on the other side. And I don't want to use the word reward, but just understand what I'm saying. Like, now you want to, like, and the person who comes out of the water is like, I get it. And you're like, well, I should get it too because I'm on the other side of the lake.
And then you continue being confused and not
Right.
knowing why you're not understanding. You don't have the clarity. You don't have the confidence.
And you're
You
mad. And
have
you're
this
mad.
aha and this breakthrough, and
Yes.
well,
And you're almost mad because you're like, well, I did what they said, which was to go around the lake, you
mhm,
know,
yeah.
get to the other side. I got to the other side. I don't, any of those things aren't really meaning anything. I don't have this deeper understanding. I don't have any of those things. Because the the peace was in the journey. The peace was in the unfolding. The peace was in, that's where the magic was. The magic was in the lake. It wasn't getting to the other side of the lake. And that's what we always think when, and that's what creates that whole when and then, right?
Huh?
When I get to the other side of the lake, then I'll be happy. When I get to, it's
That's
never
it.
going to be
No.
that. Going to be in the lake is where I got all this, whatever it was. And not saying, oh, it's always pleasant. It's not pleasant. If you go inward, it's not going to be pleasant. It's there's 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 parts that are pleasant, right? When you understand things about yourself, when you have deeper realizations about yourself, when parts of yourself burn off and they're no longer there, and you're not weighted, and you're like, um, I don't even know why I had that belief before. I was telling you in one of the last sessions, I was like, I don't even know why I believe that. I was like, it's so weird that I really believe. Where did I?
Yeah.
And so when those parts start burning off, then you're like, there's a freedom that comes from that, but not necessarily while you're in the process. So um, again, I rambled a lot, but hopefully you
No,
followed.
you felt it so deep that you know
Yeah,
how to explain it in a way that take us through that journey. Because everybody's, like you said, everybody's journey is different, but at the end of the day, is the embracing of your soul, is the embracing of all of you, the embodiment of who you really are deep inside. And to do
yeah,
that is to face your fears, to face all of you, to face the reflection that you've avoided for years, if not all of your life. And
yeah,
you've you've done something. And when you text me that, because you send me messages and I read them, and I can sense the energy that it's going through, and I
yeah,
love it. When you said I booked the trip, I had tears in my eyes, because for you
yeah,
to do that, that was a big step. That
yeah,
was a breakthrough. And by the way, when you go through this journey, it's not that you jump and you're right there. Ta-da! I arrived. Like it requires a lot of patience.
yeah.
And we have
And
gone
it
through
requires
months.
action too. It requires action. I don't want to leave the action part out. And
Totally, 100%.
for many of us who are um, spiritual people, we've created this thing that a lot of action isn't necessary. It's third dimensional. Why do I have to do this? Why do I physically need to do this? And the answer is because we live in the third or fourth or whatever dimension we're in right now. But we're here. We have a physical body. We have a physical
Mhm.
experience, and that's part of the process, is to physically shift things, because conceptually, again, is nice. I'm not going to say that getting to something where you can shift in your mental isn't nice, but the real magic is, again, when you're doing the things and you're behaving in a different way. They'll say that's when the life becomes the meditation, because it's not just I sit and meditate now. And I did that for many years. I just sat and meditated, and it was nice. There were times when there was real peace, in that meditation, and I'd get out and it'd just be chaos in my real world. But now it's like, I'm not saying there's not chaos in my world on occasion, because it's life and has nothing to do with me a lot of the time. Now I'm also seeing, well, how is, because I'm the meditation,
Mhm.
I'm the one creating the meditation through the actions. How is this now? There's different results. Things have different results. So things wouldn't have a different result just because you had a different thought. You would have to have a different thought, then do a different action to create a different result. So for me, when and the trip was the biggest part of it, because I had found out that my recently my say my, but the father of my children passed away suddenly, and that was huge in terms of the different pieces and processing, and even being in a place to process those emotions, process, what does this mean? What is so many different emotions? And I was like, I give you permission, give my body permission to process those things. And then seeing that I want being very clear that I want a different type of experience. This experience that I'm having is very limited. It's very limited, but I've outgrown it. It's like I'm wearing a size 6 shoe and I'm really a size 10 or something like that. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
tight. It's tight. It hurts. It no longer fits. And I had been waiting for someone. You asked the question, I'm taking it back a little bit. You said, what is it that you really want to do? And at that time, still recovering from still recovering from it, but really recovering from the surgery. I know I needed to be in a really peaceful environment. I wanted to really soak and relax my soul and all of those things. And the question was, well, and what's stopping you? And I was like, well, I don't have the money for that. Like, that, like, why are you asking me this? I can't. And it was like, I have responsibilities. I got bills to pay. I can't do that. I can't. And that's where I really understood that it wasn't a choice. It wasn't going to be, I don't want to say there wasn't a choice there, but it didn't feel like there was a choice anymore, because it was very clear to me that what was stopping me was the same programs that were literally dictating my life. And it was no longer about me fighting against the reality. It was me just shifting programs. It was me shifting out of that. So I became more concerned with, hey, what's this belief about? And I need to change this belief. I don't really care what's happening on the out. The belief is more important than the actual manifestation of it, because the belief is what's powering these things to manifest and keeping me in this very size 6 shoe and my feet hurt. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
is literally becoming very painful for me. And so when I was able to, I remember that night I did not sleep. And I don't know why I felt like the hardest decision, because I booked it 2 days before I left. Two days before I left. And I was like, these prices are astronomical. You should just wait. And I was like, I cannot wait. And it was like, wait till your hand feels better, wait till this feels better, wait till whatever, wait till there's always there's always so much like influence in the psyche, like to wait,
Yes.
like. And I realized from that incident with that awareness that came up of like, I was walking around like I had an IOU in my pocket that said from the universe, hey, no worries, you got 50 more years in a fully functional body. You got 10 more years. You got 10 more days. You got whatever. And I was like, nobody knows this stuff. We're all pretending that now isn't all we have. And the illusion of time sometimes really is the biggest block in creating what you want now. Because every time you say not now, it's literally saying, I need to expand. I need to change these programs. I need to become more, not now, not now. When I get more money,
Mm-hmm.
when I get better health, when I get the man of my dreams, when it's the when and then. It's the greatest, like, it's so, it's the thing that we all get caught in so many times, the when and then, and waiting for this moment in time. And people were like, oh, you should plan and you should. And I was waiting. I was like, can you go with me? And can you go? And everybody was like, oh, I'm busy. And I was like, I'm going to go alone. And you can't go alone. And then my mother would talk to me in my head, the programs of her of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to die. You can't go alone. Too dangerous. You can't leave the state. You can't leave your block. Trouble, I told you this funny thing. I'm Jamaican, so she said, trouble don't set like a rain, which means that there's no inclination to trouble, but it's always around you, right? You don't know when it's going to hit, but it's always around you. And those things had affected my nervous system so much that I really was just such a very anxious, nervous, small version of me, because it was always this looming danger. So I'd have to plan for things to be
Yeah.
perfect. And I always planned outside of myself, because I always planned that somebody else would come in and make it perfect. That was the other piece to it. It was never going to be me taking myself on that trip. It was going to be, well, when I meet the perfect guy, I guess he'll take me on that trip. Or when I get some lottery winnings, I guess it was always something outside of me that was going to bring in this peace, bring in this ability to change, bring in
Giving
this
the
ability.
responsibility to somebody
The
else.
responsibility was never me. It couldn't be me, because I was like, I already have enough responsibility. I pay bills. Get out of here. There's no there's no more responsibility that I can
Yeah.
do. So I had booked the trip. Yeah, and then I went on it, and it was like the first day I remember getting there and just being like, seeing how anxious I was in my body. I was like, oh, I should have packed this, and I should have packed this, and I should have, and then being still for a moment and spending that time alone with myself and soaking in the
Mm.
waters. And then it was like this new part of me emerged. And I realized that I was with my 6 year old, who was, I thought it was like a solo sabbatical. And I realized my 6 year old, I was taking her on the trip. And then when none of this stuff was included. It's in America, so none of the stuff was included. And going to like the restaurants on site and stuff like that, being like, well, you've already paid so much for this trip, you got to choose the least expensive thing on the menu. And I was like, no, I'm going to eat what I want to eat. i'm
Mm.
going to I'm going to, if I want dessert, I'm going to have dessert. If I want tea at my meal, but there's tea in the room, I'm going to have tea here. You can do that. I'm giving you permission. And towards the end, meeting all these, being so open and meeting all these different people who came in, just like soul family, who were just like literally there, who were like, hey, I recognize you. And I sat next to this lady at the pool who told me, she was like, I think I'm the luckiest person alive. And I was like, what? I had never heard anyone say that before in my life. And she invited me out, and we went and we met a healer. And I thought at some point, I was just thinking to myself, the luckiest person alive wants to hang out with me.
Mm.
And that was huge for me, because it just showed me how my energy had shifted. Because at one point I was like, I am the most unluckiest person alive. And now people are like attracted to me, who are completely on a different frequency, completely having a different experience. They're not in lack. They're not um, experiencing any of those things. And they're just like, oh, welcome to the tribe. Yeah, you belong here. So that was huge. And then meeting people who are like guiding me and being open, being super duper open during that trip, to even be like, somebody saying, you landed here. This is a great place to land. But by the way, there's another place you need to go to. And it was like, well, and then the first thought was like, well, I'll have to come back. And then it was like, no, I'm going to extend the trip out. You have a night to do this now. You got to find another hotel. You got to rent a car. You got to do all these things. You got to change your ticket. You got to do all these different things. And I'm like, but now it's even more and none of that even mattered, because it was like I was in a flow of um and that's the thing. Each part of this requires you to stay in flow. It's never going to it's not like this one decision you make. You're going to have to keep making the decision each time, each time, because they could have came home.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
could have came home. I could have said, well, when I save up enough, I'll come back. I'll plan this right, whatever. But I
Yeah.
went and I had the most incredible spiritual experience on this other part of the journey, which would not have even happened if I wasn't open and had action and taken action, right? And taken action, which was, okay, I have to do these things, and now I have to do them. When do you need to do them? Now.
No.
Now. You do them right
That's it.
now.
It's it.
Right? Not in 2 weeks, not in 5 weeks, not in 5 years. Now. So those are the main components that I would say are very important, which is understanding that all the illusion of time you have now. If it's oh, I need to get this, I'm trying to do something different, but I'll wait until I feel better. I'll wait until whatever.
Mm-mm.
Um, it's now. Stop pretending like you have an IOU in your pocket. We don't.
No.
Even the most spiritual people die. Even the most there's only one way out. This is not,
This
again, this is
is
not the
one life. This is one
it's not
life, and our
it's
only
not the
job.
dress rehearsal. It's not the dress rehearsal. This is not the dress rehearsal part.
No.
People think like, when I get to this, then I can live. This is not the dress. This is it. This is it right
And
now.
it's very
Right now.
unique to each and every one of us. It's very unique. So at the moment you haven't, I haven't seen you compare yourself to no one. You have owned it completely. And this trip
Not
was after
easy
what,
to
10
get there.
years? No, it has,
Huh?
it's not easy. This
No.
trip came about 10 years after. I mean, it
Oh
took
yeah.
10 years for
It took
you
10
to,
years to physically do it, to physically do it. And the craziest thing is there were parts where I had the money for it. There were parts where I could have, but it was always something else that was, I didn't want to. There was a huge part that I didn't want the responsibility of making my own happiness. I wanted somebody else to make me happy. It was simply it. I wanted some external force to come in and to say, because I also, the 6-year-old in me was like, I don't have the ability to. And I was like, I understand that, but I'm not 6 anymore.
mm-hmm.
And working from this module of feeling like this, the most wounded version of myself, having to make, and it was like at the end of the trip, I left alone, if that makes sense. So I came in as two, it was me and my 6-year-old self, and then we were able to merge. And I was able to say, I got it. You don't have to. I gave her the impossible job of driving this 18-wheeler friggin' around town. She's like, I don't know how to drive this thing. I'm like, you're doing great. It's like, I don't know. I don't have the ability to. And I'm like, shut up. And each time she's crying, I'm like, just be stronger. Just be this. Just be. And it's like, I never
Push, push,
understood that.
push, push, push.
Push, 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 push. There's a Twilight Zone episode, or the guy goes like, push, 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 push. And it's for Willoughby. But anyway, it was like understanding that, yes, the 6-year-old version of you can't do these things. But the good news is they don't have to.
Mm-mm.
You, in your adulthood, with all these tools and all this information, just because you've been believing everything the 6-year-old says doesn't mean that you have to be the 6-year-old anymore. Just because your emotional intelligence has stopped this place and you're very much connected to these beliefs and ideas that the 6-year-old came up with does not mean that you have to give the responsibility to the 6-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So I left very incorporated with
Merge.
her, not in an angry way, because again, a lot of the stuff when you're dealing with the inner child, so much of us are angry at them. It's like they're so annoying. They're so, oh, this again. It's like if we had a sick, beautiful child who was knocking on our door, and we'd be like, you again. Oh, you're so annoying. Or, like hold them and you
Yeah.
know work with them and stuff like that. So it was also relieving her. I took the keys from and I said, I will now drive. And that was the biggest part, was she no longer has to, and all the versions of myself, all the wounded parts of myself were able to get into this big 18-wheeler, since we're using that analogy. And we're like driving, and I'm the one who's driving instead of any of them, any of those wounded versions of myself driving.
Oh,
And that was the biggest shift, because it was the energy of making these decisions. Because a 6-year-old couldn't have planned that trip. She was like, I don't know what to do. This is scary. What if we go into the desert and we get murdered? And my mother said, don't do this. And there were a lot of pieces that were, like, I don't know, right? I don't even know what I'm walking into. I don't even know what's gonna happen. I don't even, so, and it's still like that. on this part of the journey, it's still like that. I don't know what I'm walking into. I don't know what's going to happen, but I understand that I have the skills, I have the ability, I have the ability to balance my nervous system, to regulate
Mhm.
it, to be able to move in a way that's different than a worried child. Yeah.
And it's beautiful because you get to experience, you mentioned chaos. You get to experience joy
Bliss.
despite of the challenges, despite of the chaos that surrounds you.
Yeah.
You learn to tap into access that inner peace within yourself that is always available to you.
Yeah. And bliss for me, which was really interesting. I
Mhm.
remember the first time I felt bliss in my conscious awareness recently was when I was in a float tank. And I remember when it came in, it was the most scariest feeling I've ever had in my life because I instantly thought, like, if I feel this, it's going to leave. And that's going to be so painful. And realizing that I had been blocking bliss because
Mm.
of that belief, that if it comes in, and for many of us, I want to say that it's not even that we're afraid of pain. We know pain. Pain is easy, right? We know it. We understand it. We've lived it for so long. But the bliss part is like, uh, oh no, 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 no. It'll leave. And for me, it was like my body was like, no, I can't let bliss in. It's gonna leave. It's gonna hurt when it leaves. It's gonna be so. And it was like, no, relax. Everything is supposed to leave. Your nervous system wasn't designed to carry any of these emotions. Just let it flow through you. So now I have the ability to like be out walking or be in nature or just sitting somewhere and see something and this huge feeling of like bliss will shoot up and it's like
Yeah.
I'll just look around and I'll be like it's so it's and it's not being created from these external things like bills still need to get paid. No, all of these things still need to get done that would have been like, oh no, bliss can't be in here because everything's not perfect.
Yeah.
And allowing it to flow and allowing that energy to move. And now it knows that I'm a safe place to go to. Like she'll allow it. She allows it. So huge, huge uh like I feel like bombs should be being dropped right now as we're talking. Like you have those sound effects like the New York DJs will do the bomb drop like
Pew, pew, pew.
like yeah, exactly like oh, just understanding those pieces because they were huge. And the only way you're going to do it is by again, you have to swim that lake, you have to swim that river of change. Not it's uh it's non-negotiable. You can't just drive around it and say I got to it.
No,
And
no.
and you don't know how it's going to come, and it's going to be unpleasant. I'm going to tell it's going to be something that would create resistance. It's going to probably the most resistance. I remember like my hands being like in these things and me still trying to do everything and realizing like who am I if I can't do these things? Like people, because again, I'm a caretaker. I'm a this. And it's like, what? You're none of those things. Who the hell am I? Who am I? And it was so much resistance and even letting go of those protective pieces of myself that I had created. And again, the interesting part about all of this is those protective pieces that you created were created from a place of where you believe that was the only way to get love. You believe that was the only way to get acceptance. You believe that was the only way to be to merge, to be a part of a tribe, to fit in, right? So
Mhm.
you formed a role, and it was such a small,
Mm.
tiny role. It wasn't even.
Yes.
It's not even like who you are. Um, it's not even who you can be. It's not even any of your potential. It's just like, and then you just you worked on it so much that you became good at it. So now it's like, well, that's what I do. I cook for everybody. I do whatever, and I'm really good at it. Well, now you have no hands. What are you going to do? You're not cooking for anybody. You can't even. I can't even pick up a kettle to pour water. You know what I mean? I'm like, can you help me open this water bottle? All these things. You can't even care for yourself. So what are you gonna do? All of these pieces being like stripped away, and then the real self being able to be emerged from the place of I don't know, because knowing creates a box, right?
Mhm.
Knowing has its limits. When you know what's going to happen, it's very much boxed in. It's very much
It's
um
filled with beliefs and
and it's yes, and
interpretations and perceptions and assumptions and all that
it's
BS that we
bandwidth.
filled ourselves in with.
Right. You filled it in, so it's safe. You're like, oh, I can go to that. I know what's going to happen. It's the unknown that really is the magic place. It's really where
And then
everything
the
happens.
acceptance, because I sense a lot of acceptance now.
Yes, definitely the acceptance. And the acceptance of the biggest piece was the acceptance of the present moment, right?
Mm.
I'm no longer at war. And I remember reading something from Eckhart Tolle when I was like in the midst of this stuff that was going on. And it was a quote, it just came, I found it and it was like the universe was always talking to me, even when I was in the darkest places, it was still like giving me messages for sure. Absolutely. uh, and the quote was something to the effect of, if you say to the universe that you want war, the universe says, I'll give you war. Like, if it's war you want, it's war you'll get. And not because it's mean, it's because that's what you're asking for.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm giving you what you're asking for. So I had this war waged with the present moment. And I conceptually did it, right? In my mind. And I was like talking to people and I was mentoring people and I was helping people. And I was like, oh, you got to peace with the present moment as long as it's good, right? Because I was like, well, it's as long as it's good, you can conceptually. What about when it's terrible, or you're perceived, or painful, or there's loss involved, or there's scarcity involved, or there's fear involved, or somebody's passing, or you absolutely don't know what to do? Then how's your relationship with the present moment? And usually subconsciously we are literally, that's the time when we wage war, because it's not supposed to be this way. If you loved me, it wouldn't be this way. If you wanted me to be here, it wouldn't be this way. You would make things easier. I wouldn't have to go through any difficulties. I would just be like an Instagrammer who could travel the world and get Botox and live fabulously, and I wouldn't be worried about any of these things. So all of those things became very aware that belief was there, um, and how to really go into that pain that created it, how to really sit with that pain that created it, and now how to disassemble this belief, because it's not true, because it is about expansion, because nobody would choose the way that they want to expand. Because it would
No.
be literally, it wouldn't be expansion if you got to choose it, right? uh so all of those pieces allowing me to see how much, uh like, it's the tapestry, right? I started to see the tapestry of how much had to come together for any of this moment to even take place. And that, when you start looking at that very big picture, right? How much went into this moment? I'm a visitor here on this planet. I get to see some trees, some buildings, maybe some water sometimes, some mountains. I love the mountains. I get to see these things. And when I'm in this place that I'm visiting, how much there's I went to a place recently and it was like what did it say? Let's say 7 million. 7 million years ago, these things happened, an ice age happened that formed this chasm of rocks.
Hmm.
And realizing in this moment, I am witnessing 7 billion years of expansion, and I get to witness it in this moment. So there's a piece in the present moment when it becomes almost very big in that way, of like how much pain had to go into that person erupting. And I'm not suggesting it, but I'm just saying you're a partner and there, you have a conversation and you're uncomfortable and you're like, nah, I gotta leave. Because that's what I would do. We had an argument. He doesn't he's not buying me new sneakers. I don't know, whatever. But it's against his belief system to buy sneakers, whatever. How much had to go into this moment for it to take place? And when you stop looking at the details of it, right? Because the details are what's triggering your own stuff, right? Oh, I'm unloved. My mother didn't buy me sneakers either. My father never bought me sneakers. He said I didn't need sneakers. Everyone hates me and they,
Mhm.
whatever. But there's just such a bigger picture, right? Which is how much, like, this person has been carrying these generational traumas. How much, how much isn't even for them to be comfortable enough to you to say no, right? New pieces start to emerge, which are very, very different and change the experience in that way. And you realize that it's not like this thing that's trying to hurt you. It's just expansion. It's just expansion. I'm
Expansion. The moment
expanding
you
you.
decide yes, and the moment you choose, the moment you're willing
Yes.
to go deep within yourself.
Yeah.
As we come close to this incredible chapter, session,
Yeah.
all of it. For someone that is contemplating, for someone that is just starting and don't even know where to start. Now, you had a great sense of awareness, but for someone that don't know where to start, what would you say to them?
Um, I'm going to say that the journey is always going to begin within yourself. Obviously,
Mhm.
it's going to begin when you stop looking for the external to, or you've decided that the external, there's something that's happening inside of me, and I can tell that the external isn't a part of it, right?
Mhm.
That I keep seeking this thing from the external. Maybe you've gotten a job that you said, hey, win and then. The best time usually is when you've actually achieved one of the wins that you thought would be the point for then I'll be happy, or then
Yes,
I'll be satisfied, or then I'll be whatever. That's a wonderful point. A lot of people really feel broken down by that point because it's such an interesting point to enter from. But any of the points is an entry point, and you understand that there's something that I have to do inside of me. Maybe there's just a more, you want to spend time more alone, you being more contemplative. You're just and you're and people would say I'm sick and tired. The interesting thing about that, that's not an entry point, because I was sick and tired, or I was sick and tired and sick and all those things for many years. That's not an entry point, because we actually have learned to work in that
do that.
energy. Most of
Yes,
us have learned to survive in that. It's literally the energy of survival. So if you're very accustomed to survival, that may not be an entry point for you. You're sick and tired. It's an awareness, certainly. There's a deeper awareness underneath it, that you would have to get to.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah. Because
definitely.
it's just,
Because
because it actually just brings up more of the same feelings. Like sick and tired
yes,
is the known. Become the known.
when you're sick and tired, you it's when the pain is so grand that you say, okay, I had enough.
Yes.
This is
So sick,
enough, and I'm
right. So sick and
willing.
tired and
It's the
enough are different.
willingness. It's
Yes.
again
So
the
it's a different
willingness
level, right?
to
So
go
sick and
deep.
tired, there's something underneath it called enough. Because a lot of us will function in sick and tired for a very long time. I know I certainly did. I know many people who do. They're like, I'm sick and tired, I'm sick and, but they don't say it, but it's enough. There's a
Mhm.
point that you get to where you understand that it's, there's a, and I don't want to say it's life or death, but maybe you'll understand it from this perspective, that level one, when I tell you that I was set to self-annihilation, that level one is, it's it's active, it's churning. At level one, it's churning, it's churning. It's like, oh, oh. And that's there's a point where it's a point though. And everybody will say there's a point. There's a point where you enter the pool. There's a point where you put your toe in. There's a point where you put your leg. And that's the other piece. You don't have to submerge yourself immediately. Everybody's process is so different.
Mm.
Sometimes it's getting to the lake, you put your toe in, right? But it's some,
What
there's
is the
a point.
question? For you, what was the question?
The question
What would
was,
be
the question was,
that
are
made you
you,
say, okay, I need guidance. I
yes, so
need
really
support.
fascinating because I just actually really understood this more. And it was understanding that because the question becomes about death, right? It becomes about some sort of death. And it's like, maybe the greatest teacher isn't isn't life itself. Maybe the greatest teacher is getting to a death because it's one of those inevitable things where you have no regrets in how you maneuver life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's so the question for me was, are you going to regret the way that you lived?
That's a big one.
And it was yes. And when I realized that no one was coming in to change the way that I was living, it was going to have to be from me. And this thing that many of us are uncomfortable with, but is literally the experience of what we're having, right? We're all getting to that place. And not in a dismal way, because a lot of the great spiritual teachers will actually say death is the greatest teacher, right? Because you're not taking any of the stuff that you accumulated. This
Mm-hmm.
shit is trash. It's going in the dumpster, or your family's going to have to worry about how to sort it out. It's really inconvenient for a lot of people to go through the 40 years of accumulation, or
Mm-hmm.
however many years of accumulation of the stuff that you thought was interesting or valuable. You're not taking the people with you, right? You're not taking, there's nothing that you're taking with you but you. And you're not even taking the
And
body
not
with you.
even you.
And
Not
not
even
even
your
you, right?
physical
It's
body.
not even the body. And you're not taking the body with you either. So I don't want to make it seem like you're taking the body with the body's not, the body's staying here. It's turning to dust. So what are you taking with you? And the piece of the non-attachment, you start to understand that these things didn't matter. Well, what does matter?
Mm-hmm.
What does matter to you? For you to be able to say, I'm here, I'm standing here, death is this beautiful angel that arises, whatever. Hey, how was your experience? Do you have any regrets? And I think that's actually what creates another cycle of karma is when we say, yes, I do have regrets. So actually being in a place where we don't have regrets, and again, not trying to spiritually bypass it, not trying to like fake it, not trying to fake the funk, because they talk about light as a feather. Your heart has to be light as a feather, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a way, and that's the weighing, right? That's the truth of it. Is if your heart is as light as a feather, you're not held down with the regrets.
Mm.
You're not held down with life should have been better. It should have been this. It should have been blah blah
With a
blah
lot of
blah.
shame.
It should have been this. It should have. The word should have can't be a part of. So that was the big question for me, because I was facing something where I really felt like I was dying, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, even. Um, and the question became, are you going to be okay with death? If you were to go tomorrow, how are you approaching this? How are you going to say that you lived your life? How are you? And I was just like, it cracked me, because I was just like, I haven't lived. And it was like, what
Wow.
stopped you? It
And
was like,
it's
what stopped you?
and it's the
You know?
willingness to experience the death of that version of you
Yes,
that you've known all your life.
yes,
Because for you to rebirth, definitely that person that has been driving your life has to
yeah,
die.
yes. So it was huge in that shift of like how what, and then now I ask myself, what would life, if you were living a life that you consciously were creating, if you were living a life that you actually wanted to live, what would it look like? What would you
Mm.
do?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? And I asked myself that, in terms of little decisions, like what would you do, right? So it's not so much about these these physical things, because when you asked me to be on a podcast, I was like, uh, the thought came up at first, and it was like, well, I haven't achieved any of those physical things to be able to speak and say, well, Diana, now I live in a mansion, and or yeah,
The society, what society has thought us it needs to be
right, right,
success.
right. It just any of those things are. Am I physically in a? I can say that I'm in a body now that I'm more patient with, that I'm more loving with, that I say yes to a
Mm,
lot more in terms of saying no, in in the things that I'll do. And me saying yes, I say yes more to different adventures, different things, um, more spontaneousness, more unknown. I let the unknown in more. So I'll say yes to things. I'm like, I don't know, but yes, um, and also not feeling the pressure to say yes just because it is unknown. I'm not doing
because
that
you're
either.
you're really tapping into yourself and
Yes, and my
honoring what you
intuition,
really want, which is a big difference.
which is a big difference. It's not to
It's
please.
no longer people pleasing.
I pissed so many people off in this process. So many people with my nose, with the, well, I'll see you do it for yourself. Why can't you do it because it was for myself? And that awareness as well has been very uh, just, and I can't even say huge. It's been just life. That's the life changing aspect to it. The
Mhm.
life changing aspect to it is that I make just I make different decisions, and not all of them are. I'm not going to say like every single one is. Some of them are very much, um, but there's an awareness behind them. Like, are you going to still do this? Are you going to? And there's also a different light that's shed on them, right? Because it's not the same feeling of I'm doing this. A lot of my behavior, a lot of my actions, a lot of my motivation was subconsciously to get love, subconsciously
Mhm.
liked, to
Mhm.
be accepted, to be a part of a tribe. Because only with that acceptance, only with that guy, or um, well, that's the only way I can get the house because he has to pay for it. I don't know, just a lot of the stuff has been very much tied to, again, the external, somebody else, all of these different pieces to it. So realizing like I'm the hero in the hero's journey. It was me. It wasn't, holy cow, I was waiting for the hero. It was, you are the hero. What? Me? Yes, you're the hero of your own story. You're the hero in your journey.
Yeah,
It's going
you
to be
are.
somebody else. It's not going to be somebody else.
It's you.
Yeah.
It's taking ownership of your journey fully. What has been the biggest takeaway in your inward journey?
Um, I think I've had so many pieces that have definitely cracked me. One of the biggest for me was when I shifted from seeing that unfavored was such a big theme for me, because I did not know it. It was so subconscious. I had identified so many other themes, but I did not know it, until I realized that, and not only that it was for me, I shouldn't say that, it was for my 6 year old. And my 6 year
Mhm.
old was the one who was driving this bus. She was the person who was in charge of all my decisions, in charge of how I was going to act, how I was going to behave, the choices I would make. So it was understanding that she no longer had to have that responsibility of being the driver of my life. And that was the biggest, because it was like a point. That was a point where things could shift, when I was like, oh, but you could do it. And I was like, me? I
Hmm.
was like, yeah, 6. And I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense, you know. And then actually doing it, and more, the more I do things, the more I become responsible for myself, if that makes sense. The more I actually do the actions, the less I'm afraid of doing the actions, because now I'm building up this muscle of I'm not afraid of it anymore. I used to be afraid of these things
Yeah.
because I never built it. I never, it wasn't me doing it. It was six-year old. So now I'm seeing, oh, you have the skill set, you have the ability. It's a different perception of everything. It's just a different perception. And it's so much
It shifts
weight. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, it really
It's
does.
everything. And
Yeah. And I'm no longer, when I
I
hear
think
the word responsibility, I'm not like, that I can't take any more responsibility. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm responsible in every moment. That's the other piece, is that I've created a system in which I'm responsible for my emotional well-being, my spiritual well-being.
Mm.
I'm responsible for it. And it just has a different meaning now.
And that's healing
Yeah.
generational trauma. And that's
Yeah.
the beauty of it. That's when you take responsibility for everything, take ownership of your life and become the driver. Oh, I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I'm very grateful to have had you in the journey, and boy, oh boy, did you piss me off so many times. Because again, I think the different parts of it is when you're accustomed to working with people who aren't um who aren't saying, who are really dealing with the conceptual part of it, right? Conceptually, oh, and then it was this person who, like, you're this person who's like, well, Kelly, what about the action part? And I was like, I didn't sign up for action. What do you mean? Me?
I know.
No. I want to be the one doing action. And I was like, kind of sitting here like, Diana, no, like somebody else is going to come in and do the action for me. And you were like, no, that's not how this works. And I was like, oh, why did I have that belief anyway? That was
Mhm.
the first time it was like, where did that belief come from? And I was like, you were 6. Yeah, yes, you needed somebody else to come and do that for you. Yes, that makes sense. No, you're not. So you don't have to wait for somebody else to come and do it. And I was like, oh, I get
And
it.
now you get, because I always say at the very beginning before we start sessions, there's going to be times where you won't like me.
You did tell you absolutely give that disclaimer. And I was like,
I read the
no,
disclaimer.
yeah. And I was like, no, I'm gonna, it's all gonna be. And plus, I have really perfected the method of, because I'm so self-aware, I can talk a good one. It's not hard for me to talk. It's not hard for me to tell you the stuff that, somebody else might be like, oh, okay, yeah, she's right on target. She knows her stuff. Yes, I know it. That wasn't the question. That was never in question. The question was the other piece, the other part of the transformation, which is like, when we grew up, we used to watch like G.I. Joe, and some of us did. I'm dating myself, but G.I. Joe would say, and knowing is half the battle. But there's another half, which is action, which is making the changes, which is, now that you can sit in, I know, and have the greatest sense of awareness. And if you are not changing how you behave, nothing changes.
It's literally taking the blind spots and bringing that mirror for you to look at yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And so
So,
it is telling you the things or showing you, guiding you for you to see the things that perhaps no one else have ever shown you.
yeah.
And
Or
that
you'd be so defensive when somebody showed
right.
you that you
Yeah.
stopped talking to them,
Mhm.
right? Because there were points where I'd be like, I don't want to talk to her anymore. I was like, I
Okay, that's
don't want
fine.
to.
That's fine. I'll
Yeah,
see you in 15 days.
right. So that was the other piece to it, is like, it's not like there's a trust that's established, right? And you're in this process and you're understanding, hey, find somebody who knows how to navigate the process. If you're going down this river, right, and picture it being like rapids and stuff like that and all this
Yeah.
stuff, and there's a guy who's like, hey, I have a boat, it's $10, I'll get you across or whatever, and you're like, oh, have you done this before? no, but I've watched others, and how hard could it be?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or the person who's like, I navigate these waters. This is what I do. Would you, if you want to come on this boat, and it's not even a boat, I'm going to be on the boat and I'm going to tell you how to swim. I'm going to tell you what to do next. And there's parts where you can get on the boat. There's parts where you have to get off the boat. There's parts, and it might make you mad that you have to get off the boat, right? There's parts where you're going to be like, no, you should be carrying me. What am I paying you for? What am I, and
Yeah.
no, this is where you have to swim through that, but it's dark. Yes. And it's night. No, there's things in the water. Yes, that's
Yeah.
the part you have to swim through. This is what you need to do in order to swim through it. I'll be here when you get on the other side. It's a different experience. So you have to choose your travel companions for this journey very wisely, and not from a place of how it's supposed to play out,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And trust that since they've been navigating these waters, they might have more insight than you do in the process.
And it's not for someone to give you the answers.
No, like I said, it's not for you to get on the boat with the person and
It's for you to find and to trust that you have the answers within yourself, and you've always had the answers within yourself. I'm just teaching you how to rely on yourself, how to tap into that inner wisdom and trust it. Because if somebody else give you the answers, then it's not your agenda, it's their agenda. It's their insight on what they think or I think you need to do your life. And that's not the case, because everybody is unique.
everybody. And the part of the trust is really important, because when I started really working on understanding trust, it wasn't that I didn't trust the universe or God or whatever. It was I didn't trust myself.
Mm-hmm.
It was I didn't trust myself. I didn't think that
Very
I
good
had the
point.
ability. I had the ability. It was a reflection of me not trusting myself,
Yep.
because there's no trust that's required for the universe. That implies that there's a separation between you and a thing, when you are the thing. The thing
Mm-hmm.
is literally nothing but designed for expansion, nothing but designed for love. So why would you need to trust it? It's just the separation in there that you've created, that's like, now it's something different. And because it's something different, I need to it's outside of me. So the universe becomes inside of you. You become
Yeah.
more of the universe. You're embodying more of the universe. But the trust was never about that in the beginning. It was a trust of um that you didn't understand that you had the skills, ability. And again, because you've been functioning from this wounded child, and at that time they may not have. That's the reality of it. At 4, you didn't have the ability to feed yourself and make a life for yourself, and maybe heal your wounds or any of those things. You didn't, and that's fine. But you're not that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a huge piece for me to also talk about with the trust, is when the trust piece was really learning how to trust myself, even be able to trust my intuition again, trust my ability to say yes to things, because you can't say yes to things if you don't trust yourself. I mean, you can, but you're not saying it for yourself, you're saying it for others. You're people pleasing. um but the beef you got, the beef that most people have with not trusting God or trusting the universe or trusting life, is they're still thinking that they're the wounded self that doesn't have the ability to do these things. So I can't trust myself to pull this
Just
off. I can't
beginning to
trust myself
trust.
to work through it. Yeah. It's beginning to trust yourself, to see
Wow.
yourself in a different way.
Oof. I mean, we can go on and on and
Yeah.
on. There's so much yumminess. You see, it just flows, because it's you speaking from your own experience, from your own well of knowledge, of wisdom.
and
And
and be a crosser of the river of change. Like I have like a thing that says, I crossed it. I did it. I crossed it.
and
Look at
it's
myself.
learning that it never ceases never ceases. It just
Yeah.
continues.
Right.
But then now you were equipped to notice and to shift and to choose where to go and how to feel. And that's a big shift.
The biggest
Very different. So this is not going to be the last episode. I don't know how long we've been here. It's been, I mean, when we're having fun, we lose track of.
time, of course.
Ah, so I want
And
to
there's
thank
just so much
you.
like good stuff that's like being channeled and being remembered and being explained and all that stuff. So it was really an honor to sit and talk with you and thank you. And um this is an amazing, amazing thing that you do. It is. You won't People won't understand it until they're going through it themselves. And I don't think that I'm not looking at I've reached a destination. I haven't. There's many other rivers of change for me to go through, but now and they'll require different tools and they'll require different things and whatever. But
Yeah.
the piece, I will celebrate the now moment of it, which is I've gotten in this now. I'm not where I was. I'm not the person I was.
Mm.
I'm. It's very different for me. So I will celebrate the
Very
now.
different. Very different. And I want to celebrate you. I want to celebrate your courage
Thank you.
because you and I have only known you because you've experienced it, and I because I've witnessed it and also felt it, even here, so close. And I just want to celebrate your courage and your willingness to always go deeper, even when you didn't want to, even when you didn't understand it,
Yeah.
even when there was big resistance and
Resistance.
angry.
Resistance.
But you've always processed the moment, the feelings, the emotions, and you've always said yes. And that's what has made the difference in how you feel now. So thank you for inviting me in this journey of yours.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for allowing me and inviting me and allow me to witness because every one of you is very different. And it's so incredibly magical when I see someone, when I see a woman that is accepting of herself, that it's loving herself and is making now decisions for herself and expressing what she wants and how she wants to create life without comparing herself with others. And that's freedom. So thank you. And I celebrate you.
So good. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who have joined us. If you stayed until the end. Thank you for always being here, always listening, and always being a witness to these incredible stories of incredible women. Thank you. This is undressing the soul between us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Hold on.